the 49ers blow out the Pittsburgh Steelers in one of the most surprising games of the weekend. Brock Purdy arguably looks like the best quarterback in the NFL right now. He is running, maybe not the best quarterback in the NFL, excuse me, running one of the best offenses in the NFL with a great head coach, with awesome weapons around him. They back up the Brinks truck to Bosa. We know George Kittle is out there. We know they have Deebo Samuel and Christian McCaffrey just eating these guys up. And I think the biggest thing is the 49ers are kind of back in their groove now. Like it was really just a copy and paste from Brock Purdy to Jimmy Garoppolo, but Brock Purdy's only $934,000. Jimmy G's a $20 million a year, $15 million a year quarterback, And yes, he did win the game in his debut with the Raiders, but the way that the Niners look so convincing over the Steelers, some great takeaways from this game. I mean, obviously, Brandon Ayuk caught all 8 of his targets. Deebo Samuel caught 5 of 7. Christian McCaffrey turned 22 carries into 152 yards. George Kittle had 6 targets, only 3 catches, but they were spreading the ball around so well. And even with Nick Bosa missing that entire offseason, this defense was still tapped in. Fred Warner had a great game, 8 tackles, tackle for loss, pass breakup that led to an INT. Drake Jackson had a big day as well with 3 sacks, which matches his entire total from last year. Defense had 5 sacks and 2 turnovers while allowing just 7 points and 3.9 yards per play. Now, that is better, obviously, than the Bengals' 2.6 yards per play overall, which was absolutely horrible to see. But the Niners in here, man, I mean, again, Brandon Ayuk, 129 yards, 2 touchdowns, caught all 8 of his targets. It's his 5th 100-yard game of his career. First time he's posted multiple touchdowns in a 100-yard game. He also had a huge block that helped Christian McCaffrey get out on that 65-yard touchdown run. And really, they just never looked back, right? I mean, the winning formula is really the same. Have your quarterback make some critical throws when needed. Nothing major. You ain't got to win the game. You might have to make a throw on a drive that helps us win the game, but you don't have to win the game with your arm. We got you an elite running back. We got you an elite tight end. The front office is one of the best, maybe outside of the pace. The formula still feels very much the same here because we know that the offense is going to click. We know that San Francisco is one of the most well-coached teams in the NFL. I just didn't expect them to make a jump like this over a Steelers team with Brock Purdy facing off against the Steelers they were on the road, right? Let me see. Let me see. Let me see. No, come on. I'm typing fast. Can't you tell? Yeah, Steelers were at home. Niners on the road, winning 30-7. Nick Bosa was in every play in the first half. He had 5 consecutive 3-play drives by Pittsburgh, 5 straight 3-and-outs to open the game for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Nick Bosa, two tackles, 1 quarterback hit, generated enough pressure on a handful of other plays. Of course, he gets his money, so he's good to go. Now, the Niners did have 11 penalties for 85 yards. That is something you want to see them clean up. They clearly have to get better about that. That's not going to fly in the postseason. That's not going to fly in close games, of course, with some of the better teams you're going to be playing. And they're scot-free right now for injuries, thankfully. All of their major players are tapped in. Brock Purdy, Christian McCaffrey, George Kittle, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk. What this says for the Steelers, though, I mean, this is very confusing because the Steelers, well, kind of. I didn't have the Steelers in my top 15. I think the Steelers are a good team. I don't think they're as good as really everybody else says because a lot of people have the hype or have hype for the Pittsburgh Steelers, but it's still about Kenny Pickett. It's still about having a defensive minded head coach. Yes, they can score points and they have weapons on both sides of the football. Darnell Washington, George Pickens. Unfortunately, Deontay Johnson is out. We know about the vaunted Pittsburgh Steelers defense. They bring in Patrick Peterson, which is an amazing pickup, right? But where was the offense? I mean, realistically, yes, we know Kenny Pickett was hurried some, but it was just very, very odd, very odd to see how the Steelers offensive front, really performed here. The Kenny's Pickett timing on his passing routes wasn't very sharp. He was definitely responsible for where he placed the football, but I think he could have thrown the football away in some instances instead of taking a loss or taking a sack clearly. And of course, it doesn't ever help when you're, constantly being hurried and your offensive line isn't looking super solid. But you even look like just some first half takeaways. The Steelers were flat. Middle of the defense was literally targeted by Brock Purdy and the 49ers. They were talking about the picket fence in the preseason. Yeah, where was that? TJ Watt didn't get that fumble recovery. You feel like he should have. Oh, man. Man. You want to see better. You definitely want to see better for the Pittsburgh Steelers. The middle of the defense is a little questionable, too. Now, of course, Cameron Hayward and Leal were injured during the game, so that's going to matter a lot. But when you look at getting exploited big time in between the hash marks, Christian McCaffrey, 22 carries, over 150 yards. I understand he's Christian McCaffrey, and we're talking about one of the best O-lines in the league in the San Francisco 49ers, but we're talking about a Steelers defense here. We're talking about a Mike Tomlin-led defense. We're talking about a defensive line with, yes, Cam Hayward did get injured, but we're talking about a defensive line with TJ Watt. And the middle of the defense has kind of been a concern. You thought it had improved some, maybe getting a little more competent, being a little more competitive in some of these games. But TJ Watt is still a guy. Still a game changer. He's still one of the GOATs, a straight dog in this game. But he's only one guy. He's only one guy. And again, going back to getting the middle of the defense worked on, the Steelers, I think they flat out just got out coached. They were in a little over their head. Kenny Pickett is still young. People want to act like Kenny Pickett is on this Trevor Lawrence trajectory or on this Jalen Hurts or Josh Allen trajectory in terms of leaping. Kenny Pickett is a solid quarterback, yes, but I think his ceiling is Kirk Cousins, which can lead to possibly a Super Bowl win, maybe, because we still have questions about Kirk really performing in the big time games. I know as my Saints, clearly he had the big, playoff win and what would push off, I feel like, the year after the no call. But the Steelers are loaded. And this might just be one where you burn the tape, right? Mike said we were horrible. It was unacceptable. We were bad. Injuries do matter, but you got to see more out of, again, a loaded AFC team and a loaded conference in a loaded division and a loaded conference. It's just 1 week, right? There's no do-overs. Again, burn the tape. It is what it is. Just got out coached by Kyle Shanahan, in my opinion. They really did. The Niners came to play. They're loaded. They showed that. Really, they just showed the differences in schemes because Purdy and Pickett, probably just kind of a toss-up, right? If we're just talking about like what most people really think of Kenny Pickett versus Brock Purdy, like, yeah, pretty comparable. Tomlin and Shanahan, yeah, pretty comparable. The offenses with weapons, not to the Niners, of course. Defenses, take your pick. What's it going to come down to? Schemes, coaching, situational football. Definitely an interesting one, though, as the Niners do blow out the Pittsburgh Steelers.